a grown man who has had a business for over 25 years, and you're having to break it to him that one of his trusted employees stole money from him and essentially ended up putting him out of business. That is such an emotional situation, and it's so heartbreaking.
So, welcome to Beyond the Paycheck. I'm Paula Christine. So, we all have to pay those taxes every year, unless you're fortunate to not pay taxes, but I'm not sure that's a good thing. Although a lot of retirees don't pay taxes. So I guess that's good for them. But anyway, sometimes you end up in trouble because you haven't paid enough, or you end up in a situation where you might have to owe the IRS money and you can't pay it, or they say you owe more than you do, so sometimes you need to seek out an expert. So we have an expert with us today. So, and I know a little bit about taxes. I understand them for when I work with my clients about, pre-tax, after tax, but there's something I'm sure that I don't know. So let's get into that conversation. So welcome, Morgan.
Hello, thank you for having me, Paula. I really
You're welcome.
appreciate the opportunity to talk tax. And before anybody rolls their eyes or says, I'm not interested, sit tight. I promise it's not going to be a boring conversation.
Right before I hit the record button, we were talking about quarterly taxes, which I know I pay, and it's very frustrating sometimes to remember. I mean, I've been doing it for 25 years, so I have an idea when it's due. But if you're not familiar with it, it definitely isn't quarterly.
Right, right. So at the federal level, and some states are a little different, but at the federal level, as a self-employed person or somebody who has to report and pay their own tax, their own income tax, I should say, it is April 15th, June 15th, September 15th, and January 15th. So it's not necessarily quarterly. And a lot of people don't know that those are the minimum requirements. So if you break it down and think of it as like another car payment and you calculate it out monthly, it's a lot easier to stay on top of.
Yeah, I was just after you mentioned that, and I was thinking, I might do that for next year
Yeah.
because it is a big chunk to have to come up with at those times of the year when it would be so much easier to just pay them as you go. I mean,
Yeah.
that's what an employer does for you.
Mhm.
It's just us that are self-employed that have to do it ourselves.
Yeah, and it's so hard. I mean, all of us, when you're self-employed and you're working for yourself and you're keeping track of 100 different things that come across your desk or are on your plate, in addition to real life, right? Your family and parents and, tending to personal schedules, it's really hard to remember that semi-quarterly obligation. So if you break it down more, make your deposit every month, it's so much easier to maintain. And then you're truly compliant. The IRS and the state will say, oh my gosh, okay, well, you're really on top of it. And you won't have a problem.
So two things I want to say. One is that I did well this year, so I had to seek out my CPA and say, "Hey, I did well this year. Let's recalculate." And I think that that's very important to for people who are self-employed, that if you are having a good year, so that you don't end up with that huge tax bill whenever you do your taxes, plus your October or your April quarterly,
Right.
that it might make sense to kind of relook at where you're at halfway through the year.
Yeah,
Now,
I'm a huge proponent of thinking of your CPA or your enrolled agent, whoever you're working with for your annual tax obligation, think of them as a member of your personal board, right?
right.
Anytime you're making a big money move, a big financial decision, reach out to them. If you are self-employed, get with them quarterly and go over your books. See where you are, because then they can help you strategize and make pivots throughout the year. If
Mhm.
you bring everything to them in March and your return is due April 15th, right? You're talking about the past. You're talking about something that's already happened,
Right.
so you can't make any pivots that may help you throughout the year.
Yeah, and it's good to project, like I said, having to know that I don't want that huge tax bill because I know I'm going to owe. If I can
Mhm.
take care of it this year, it's so much better than taking care of it next year. But one other thing that I wanted to mention about the quarterlies before we move on, and I think it's important that people don't know that if you don't pay them on time, that you get penalized.
Yes, you do. And then they charge interest on the penalty.
Yeah, isn't
So,
that lovely?
yeah, yeah. Well, our whole tax system is based upon a voluntary situation. Okay. They call it voluntary, which a lot of us laugh about, right? Because if you don't do it, you get penalized severely. But we are volunteering our financial information and volunteering that, hey, we know as self employed people we have an obligation to pay this, so we are doing it voluntarily. Um,
I don't think I like that word
I
volunteering. It doesn't
I know.
fit. We need
I
to come up with
know. I
something different
know. I
because
know.
there's an I'd involve I would choose to not pay them, so I'm gonna volunteer
Right?
out. Yeah.
I know. And the hard part is when you really think about what our tax money is used for, right?
Mhm.
It's really what makes our country fund operating from one day to the next. It goes to our roads, our military, our schools. Some of us for healthcare, it goes to our social security, to our elderly. It goes to all these different things that really do make our country move and operate from one day to the next. So, as much as all of us don't like
Yeah.
taxes, it really does keep us going. Um, One thing that I always kind of circle back to is if you don't like the way that taxes are being spent, get involved at your local level. Involved with your local government. Get on your city council, attend the meetings, work all the way up through your state legislature. Get involved with all those people. Send them emails, send them communications, watch what they're doing because at the local levels, you can have a greater impact than just waiting for like a presidential election.
Well, even then you can't control that form of government anyway.
It's true, but if
Right.
you get more involved, you have a voice.
True. I think most people use their voice to, just talk about it at the kitchen table or on Facebook than they
I
do to
know.
actually get involved.
And that doesn't help.
No,
You know,
it
it
does
really
not.
doesn't. It's if you don't like the way your taxes that you're paying are being spent, get involved with your local government. That's where you can start having an impact.
So let's when we're talking about, taxes, I always tell my clients when they owe taxes, it's a good thing because you are making money. If you
Yeah,
don't make money, then you don't pay taxes and then you can't pay your bills. But
right.
we do know that there's ways of having, using pre-tax dollars in retirement accounts and, having non-qualified investments and to because capital gains are at a different rate than regular income tax. So there are different ways to kind of lower that tax bill if you work with someone and they understand that and they help you.
Right. Right. And that's why I say get with them every time you're making a financial move. Get with your accountant, your EA, your CPA a couple of times throughout the year and just touch base on these points that could cause a tax consequence. Because if you get with them, like let's say for tax year 2024, you meet with your tax professional 4 times throughout the year. And somewhere, let's say in the middle of summer, you decide you're going to sell your home and move to a bigger home. It's important to sit down and talk to them about that. They may charge you an hour or two of their time to meet with you, but they may save you 2 and 3 times that by employing a tax strategy that will help you when you make this big move, when you make this big decision. So they're worth their weight in gold. They really are.
Yeah, and I think you coordinate with that with your financial planner also so that you guys are always on the same page when it comes to your tax liability or saving on taxes or whatever that is that you need to be ahead of the game and be thinking smarter then because once April comes, of next year, there's absolutely
No, you
nothing you
can't
can do.
retroactively make decisions at that point. At that point, you're done.
You're
You've
done.
done what you could with tax year 2024, and you're stuck with it. And that's why I always envision, like, I'm a basketball player, right? And I've got these team members on my bench. It is my financial advisor and my tax professional first and foremost. And then after that, it's a couple of other people who weigh in on what I do financially. But really, like you said, the financial advisor is another one that you should stay in contact with. Don't just have accounts with these people and meet with them once a year and go, "Oh, okay, great, I made money." Okay, but what are your goals? Your short-term goals, your long-term goals, right? These are the
Right.
people who can employ all of this knowledge to better your position and what your goals are, and help you really meet them.
Yeah, I talk about with my clients all the time about different tax strategies because if you don't employ them today, then when you get into retirement, there's nothing you can do. And if you have to, take an additional $10,000 out of your account, and you're normally in that 10% tax bracket. Well, that additional $10,000 might be taxed at 22%. So you got to
Right.
understand, first of all, how the tax laws work and what that means. But most people don't. I mean, I could sit down and talk to, probably 90% of the people in the world, if not higher. They have no idea how the tax laws work.
I know. I know. And that's why leaning into your trusted tax professional is so very important. It
So
really
what type
is.
of advice do you give your clients?
Boy, well, the people who are my clients are a little different because my whole area of practice focuses on dealing with tax debt only. So we don't do tax returns or tax strategizing, leveraging tax positions. All of ours is like after the fact, right? You file your income tax return in April and there's a $50,000 balance owed and you can't pay it. Your eyebrows just raised.
I don't know if that's just an
I
extremely large
I
number or what, but
Yeah.
yeah, nobody wants that, but I'm sure it
No.
happens. I'm
No,
sure it
it
happens.
happens a lot. Most of our clients who are individuals owe between 150 and 400,000 in unpaid
Wow.
income tax. But we have payroll clients, business clients, where something happened in their business, right? And it put them behind, or there was fraud and embezzlement, or a natural disaster, and the impact was far reaching. Um, our payroll clients usually start at about 80,000 and go, the largest one I've had was over $30 million.
Oh my god. Okay, so
Yeah.
let's go back to I'm it's me. I come to you. I go, Morgan, I know I did well. We adjusted it, but now
Mhm.
I owe $50,000. I don't want to put that in the universe, but we'll use that as an
Right, right.
example.
Sure.
How would you help me? I mean, like, I know it's due, but do you,
Right.
what happens?
So, first and foremost, whenever somebody has a balance owed to the IRS or to the states, the amount that they owe is important to understand and how we got there. The second important part is to prevent any more tax from being added to it. So we
Okay.
really focus on, okay, so let's say Tom comes to me with this $50,000 bill. Okay, Tom, we're almost all the way through 2024. Does 2024 look the same as 2023 did? And if he says yes, okay, have you made any estimated tax payments this year? Well, no, I just found out that my 2023 has a balance. So no, I'm also behind with 2024.
Okay. Wait. Can you not know 2023 had a balance? I mean,
Well, because think about it, when people file extensions,
yeah. Oh,
right?
yes.
When
Okay.
is the
I get it.
return
Yeah.
done? It
Yeah.
doesn't get finished usually until a couple of weeks
October,
before
right?
the October 15th
Yeah.
deadline. And then at that point, you're three quarters of the way through
Oh my God.
2024. So this is where a lot of people like end up behind, right? So I always say to people, if you can in any way file your tax return on time in April, do it. Because if you have a tax balance in one year and then you delay filing your return until October and then you're adding another balance and then you're all the way through another year, right?
So
You're
that
doing
50,000 could end up being 100,000. And then I'm sure
right.
you got taxes and penalties or no, penalties and interest on top of that, correct?
Correct.
But what do you do
Correct.
if you don't have the money? Like,
So if you don't have the money, first and foremost, getting back to the original question, you have to draw the line in the sand and say, okay, I've got to get compliant with my current obligations, right? So we're already in November now. We've missed the April, June, and September estimated tax payments. The big focus is let's get a tax payment made now of what you can, and then plan on full paying the one that would be due by January 15th. Okay. So for tax year 2024, we'll at least have made a partial deposit, partial payment towards the taxes owed. And then just stay focused on making your tax estimated tax payments moving forward. Okay? So that draws that line in the sand and says, "Okay, I'm going to stop adding more debt on." We call it pyramiding in the tax world, right?
mhm,
You're putting a new balance on top of the old and then another new balance on top of all of that. So if you picture a pyramid, every year you're adding a new layer.
right.
So, first things first, stop the bleeding, get in front of it, stop accruing more tax. We know at this point 2024 is going to probably have a balance owed. That's okay. We'll wrap it into the resolution plan. And then we start looking at your finances and we say, okay, every month, what is your average income and what are your recognized expenses? Okay. And I say recognize because a lot of people say, well, I have to pay for my kids to be in private school and I have to pay for all these meal plans and stuff. Well, the
Yeah.
IRS frowns on that when they're looking at what do you need for your health and welfare? And then anything left thereafter is in the IRS's eyes, in the tax agency's minds, their money. Okay. So if we look at your finances and say, okay, after everything you need for you and your family's health and welfare and your obligations, you have no money left over, we can actually go back to the tax agency and say, look, priority number one, no more debt accrual, right? We're starting to pay our estimated tax payments. We're staying
Mhm.
compliant moving forward. We're not adding any more debt other than what we know will be owed on 2024. Here's our financial condition. Here's our income. Here's our expenses. After we pay our obligations, we have no money to pay this. They will put the case in a temporarily uncollectible status. And what that means is you're not going to have to worry about them coming and taking aggressive collection action or anything like that for the next year or two. If something happens and, like, let's say, for example, somebody wins the lottery, right? They're in that uncollectible status. Well, sure enough, the IRS is going to have that flagged and they're going to come knocking and like, okay, so we put you in uncollectible, but now you won $2.5 million. We want you to pay us, right?
Well, as you should.
Yeah, right,
As
right.
you
Clear
should.
the deck.
Yeah.
Clear the deck. Oh, and make sure if you win the lottery, talk to your tax professional and say, how much do I owe in tax on this? And pay it right away.
I always say if I win the lottery, first it's to the attorney, second it's to the tax person, and then third it's to the financial advisor. And ultimately, if you could get all three in one room, that would be great.
Wouldn't that be great?
That would
Oh
be
my
great
goodness.
because, well, winning 2.5 million would be awesome.
Oh my
But
goodness.
if you actually got involved with, I know this is a tangent, but if you actually got involved with those people in the beginning, because so many of them spend all the money, they're
I
broke within
know.
5 years, you might be able to put a plan together to actually keep it.
Same thing with a lot of professional athletes. They come out of college, they're making millions of dollars, they break an arm or a leg and they can't play again, and all that money is gone. It's like, oh,
Oh, yeah, I know. Crazy, crazy.
How many millions of dollars did you get?
Okay, but I have to go
You
back
know.
because my common sense hat is on right now.
Okay.
If if I had a $50,000 tax liability, um, and then now I'm on my repayment program and uh, they're looking at my expenses. Well, first of all, where did the money go in the beginning? Are you just blowing it on your business? I mean, like it doesn't even make sense to me because we know we have to pay taxes, and if you don't, then
Mhm.
you've got a problem there. But I don't know, how does somebody get in that situation?
Wow, we've seen so many different background stories. We've had people who were very ill, but they can't itemize. They're right on that cusp. They don't have real estate, but they had to shell out a lot of money. And they could take the standard deduction, but couldn't itemize everything. There's people who have, unfortunately, a lot of embezzlement,
Mm,
theft happen. People who have just mismanaged their money. We've had people who have gone through natural disasters, right? Like what we just saw this fall, Florida, North Carolina, all of these horrible impacts. And you have insurance. Let's talk about businesses. You have insurance to help cover natural disasters, right? But that's just for your business. And you typically have like a business interruption policy.
right.
And that'll cover a little bit, but it doesn't cover everything. And then what about we had a client once who was in the construction world, and but he was a very special niche, and I don't want to disclose too much, but he couldn't operate, right? His area was impacted by flooding. He couldn't operate for it was 9 months before he was able to start getting contracts again. And part of the problem with that is your insurance pays for some of it, but it doesn't pay for all of that. So for 9 months, he wasn't able to bring income in. What do? You had resources and you were saving up money to pay, let's say, payroll taxes. But then that money was needed to pay people as they're losing their jobs, right? And paying for expenses that were outstanding for the business. You had some insurance money come in, but it doesn't cover you for 9 months. So
But my
people
hat
have all
says
kinds of situations
I'm
pop
I'm
up.
I'm listening to that, but I'm thinking, why would you, if you have no income coming in, then you really don't owe any taxes, correct? I mean, is that
So
where my head?
for income tax, but let's say for a business for payroll tax, right? And what you do is when you pay your employees, you withhold the income tax from the employee's paycheck. You
Mhm,
withhold their portion of Medicare and Social Security, and then the business matches the Social Security and Medicare, right?
mhm.
Those are the payroll tax obligations that a small business has. Well, if you are looking at immediate needs, right? You've got that money sitting in the bank waiting to turn over to the government, but you're looking at bills coming in. You're saying, oh my gosh, I don't have enough money. You use those monies to pay necessary business expenses, and then all of a sudden you're accruing a tax debt.
Okay,
And it
that makes
happens.
sense. Okay, yeah,
It
and because you're
happens.
continuing to try to run your business and pay your
Correct.
employees, but you don't necessarily have the income in because you're taking it from savings. And okay,
Right.
that makes sense.
Right.
That makes sense.
We had a business one time, and it was such a sad situation. This gentleman had had a business for like 25 years, right? And he had an in-house bookkeeper, and she had been with him for 15 years, right?
Hmm.
No more checks and balances at this point. He trusted her
Yeah.
implicitly.
No, always checks and balances.
Always. I don't care
Always.
how long somebody has been with you. I don't care if they're a family
Yeah.
member.
Family members are the
Always.
worst.
Oh,
Family
I,
members are the worst.
I can tell you situations where it would really make you lose faith in humanity because family members were the ones embezzling money from the businesses. So they bring us on because the owner got a notice from the state for a hearing over unpaid sales tax. For the prior 2 to 3 years, the
Oh,
bookkeeper
wow.
had been telling him, "Hey, things are a little tight. Can you invest some money into the business?" She was embezzling funds and doing it by not paying taxes, and then she was getting the mail, so she would take all the notices and hide them. And he had no idea what was going on. She would have him sign tax returns that showed that all the taxes were paid, have him sign checks for making payments on these taxes. This is going before online deposits. And then she would just destroy the tax return, destroy the check. So he hired us for this sales tax situation, and we're on the phone with her and him. She's there. She's mea culpa. I'm so sorry. Just the business hasn't been doing well. I didn't want to break your heart. Couldn't afford to pay the sales tax, right? This was her story. Okay, okay. And I said, "Well, is this the only tax issue?" "Yes, yes, yes. Only tax issue. Only thing we haven't paid." We get off the phone and I call the owner and I said, "Something isn't making sense. Something's ringing ringing in my head. Do you mind if we look into your payroll taxes as well?" "Yeah, of course. Of course." So he signs power of attorney. We conduct investigations. He not only owed the state payroll taxes, he also owed the IRS.
Oh, no.
So what we knew to be 120,000 in unpaid sales tax was actually over 400,000 between
Oh, my God.
unpaid sales tax, payroll tax at the state level, and payroll tax at the federal level.
So did he go under?
So went under, um, called the police, had her arrested. She was embezzling funds. And this is somebody who had been with him for 15 years.
And there's
So
really not much you can do to get that money back.
well, no, no, but we were able to show the nefarious action she took to hide all of this from him. And we were able to get him absolved of personal responsibility because sales tax and payroll tax is a trust tax. Sales tax, you collect it from the public and hold it in trust to turn over to the state. Payroll taxes, you take the money out of your employees' paychecks and theoretically hold it in trust to turn over to the state and the federal governments,
Mhm.
right? So these trust taxes, because a business is typically a multi-member LLC, a partnership, a corporation, right? These entities can't make the decisions on their own. So the tax agencies have gotten smart and they pierce the corporate veil to hold people personally accountable for basically overseeing this process that was supposed to happen, and then it broke down. The process broke down and the payments weren't made. So as a business owner, if you don't pay payroll tax, the government can pierce the corporate veil and hold you personally accountable for the money you took out of employees' paychecks and didn't pay over.
So she was personally responsible then.
She ended up personally
She go
responsible
to
for
jail?
all of it. No idea.
Oh,
Because I didn't have power of attorney for her, I couldn't keep tabs on the situation.
bummer,
But
Morgan. You need to find
I
out.
know, right? I mean, it's the hard part is, when you have a grown man who has had a business for over 25 years, and you're having to break it to him that one of his trusted employees stole money from him and essentially ended up putting him out of business. That is such an emotional situation, and it's so heartbreaking.
Yeah, well, I mean, uh, I guess I've just worked with enough people to know that and it's sad to say you trust no one.
I know.
And
Isn't it
it's really
sad?
hard to say that, but you really trust no one.
I know. I know. And the family member cases are the worst. I had a situation where it was third generation business and the grandparents were running the company at this point, and a grandson was stealing money from the business. Hey, it's just heartbreaking. I mean, how do you do that? But, in this day and age, there is such a separation with ethical boundaries and ethical compasses that, oh, I hope we return to it just so people feel better and more comfortable in their own skin and can look at themselves in the mirror and not feel bad. Um, when I have clients who come to me, I have clients who will have a very pointed situation happen that will impact them and cause them to accrue a tax debt. They are always beating themselves up. I'm like, listen, first of all, I understand that you have this sense of obligation and responsibility, and I admire it, but stop beating yourself up. You didn't intentionally do this. There's always a solution. We're going to
Yeah,
find it.
but you got to
But
understand. I
whew,
mean, with that situation, I mean, I'm sure the guy just felt totally duped by somebody that he probably cared and loved about, and had
yeah,
to wonder what he missed. And I'm sure he beat himself up for a long time. I mean, I
he
know that
did.
I would. Yeah, you
He
would have
did.
to. And then all the people
And
that lost their jobs, and you would feel responsible for
yeah,
that. And the problem is that people who want to do those things, they're
they find
just
a way.
they're so much smarter than if they put all that smarts to good choices. I wonder what they could really accomplish.
I think about that all the time when you hear about these fraud situations where these companies have been hacked and people are stealing social security numbers and dates of birth and all that. Oh, if these computer people would just put in their efforts to good instead of bad,
Greed. It's
you know.
all about greed.
Oh, it is, and it's so sad.
It is very, very sad.
So sad.
Yeah,
So,
but we can just kind of pray on the fact that we hope that, people find goodness in their heart and change their
mhm,
ways, and, but it's all we can do. You can't.
absolutely.
Oh, but there are things you can do as a business owner and as an individual. You just hire people to check on the people that are working
Well,
for you.
as much as a business owner has 1,000 things on their plate, right? The money is something that you need to constantly have your finger on the pulse of.
Hmm.
I would let other people do some of the support role, but you're the one who always needs to manage the money at the end of the day. You really do. If not, you are opening yourselves up to embezzlement, theft, fraud. So it
Or
has to be one of your number one
and
priorities.
there's so many companies out there that can take on your payroll, so and do all
Yep.
those things for you, that you don't need to have someone in the office to manage that. I mean, I have a couple of friends that they work for companies that do that, and then working closely with your CPA and keeping an eye on things. I mean, you should do that. I mean, you would do that for
Completely
yourself.
agree.
I would imagine you should do it for your business.
I know some business owners though who are like, "Oh yeah, yeah, they're handling it." Don't
Well,
look at it.
one thing I've learned in my career is that just because someone is a business owner, one, you can't assume that they're making a lot of money. And two, you can't assume that they know how to run a business. A lot of people get into business and are successful just by chance,
Yeah,
because they made some right decisions along the way. But most people who own businesses have never owned a business before. They don't know. They don't know what they're getting into. And
no,
then they
I would
try to put
agree.
good people in position to help them. And sometimes those people aren't the best people for that position.
I completely agree. Most of our business clients that end up coming to me are very good at what they do, but they're not good at running a business. And I would say most of them self admit they're like, I'm really good at making a meal, creating a menu and creating this atmosphere where people want to be once a week with their family and friends. But I couldn't tell you the first thing about a balance sheet. I have
Yeah.
a lot of clients in the auto mechanic, daycares, believe it or not, a lot of doctors and
Oh,
dentists and
they're the
lawyers.
worst. They're the worst when it comes to running a business. They have
No.
Doctors are notoriously the worst for running businesses.
Oh, I
And you know
know.
what? Also, what people don't do from working with business owner clients is they don't put plans in place for something to happen. So, it's the business interruption coverage. It's also about having a buy sell agreement if
Right,
you were to happen to become disabled or pass away to make sure that your business continues. They just don't know those things. And they might be in business for 30 years and you walk in and you're like, hey, do you have this, this, and this? Oh, no, I didn't know. So they just got by
right,
pure luck that nothing's ever happened. But
right.
there are a lot of things that they should know and they just don't. But, you know, what are we
Completely
going to
agree.
do? What are we going to
Completely agree. And there are so many great small business owners out there. There really are. I mean, that is the fabric of our nation. All of the people who are like welders and fabricators and I mean, all of you out there, I just want to give huge props to because if you have the backbone and the inner strength to create a business, it's not easy. Paula, as you can attest, it is not easy having
Yeah.
a business. So
Sometimes, sometimes you go hungry.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I've just got to give kudos to all of you out there who are self-employed, who are small business owners, making it happen every day. Just I want to encourage you to do it the smartest way that you can. If you're looking at getting into business, if you're looking at starting a business, before you open your doors, align yourself with a great tax professional and if you can, bookkeeper, right? They're going to keep you out of trouble from day one. And if you think you need 50,000 to get you through until you really kind of get on your feet, think of it as 85. If you
Yeah,
can
we
never have enough funding when you're starting a new project.
we I interviewed a guest, I think it was about 3 weeks ago, Mark, who decided that he was going to open a pizzeria, and he talks about how he failed. And it's interesting because what he didn't, and one of the things he says is, I didn't have enough cash to make sure that my personal expenses were in his own personal savings would be taken care of. So that, he went with months without paycheck. And
Yeah,
then, so eventually had to close his doors. But yeah, I
so
always say
hard.
strong business plan, and then align yourself with all the right people. So
Yep.
on that note, we're gonna go because we are well over my allotted 20-minute podcast. So we are at 40.
You bet. You bet. Oh, I'm so sorry, Paula. It's
Oh,
always such a great
oh,
topic to talk about, though.
don't worry because I think we're and cut all this out, us chatting. I'm talking to my editors, but I'm gonna close right now, and then we're gonna do another reopening
Okay.
so that they can take and split it if they need to.
Okay.
Okay.
That sounds good.
So Morgan, I'm assuming that you work with individuals and business owners,
Correct.
correct?
Hmm.
So if somebody needs your service, they can reach out to you. How?
Yeah, through online, you can look me up, Morgan Q Anderson, EA. You can look up our company, Golden Lion Tax Solutions. I'm on Facebook, LinkedIn. My direct number is on our website. My direct email is on our website. Just if you have a tax account question, if you have a problem, if you're scared, reach out to me. The best thing you can do if you have a consequence, put it on somebody else's shoulders to lead the way. That's what we always tell people. I'm going to grab you by the hand and guide you through this. Just follow my lead.
I think most people they see that and they just freeze,
Hmm.
and then one, they don't know who to reach out to, and two, they kind of hope it's going to go away, which we all know that it
Yeah, it
doesn't.
doesn't.
It
It
doesn't.
doesn't. No, and the penalties and interest just make it snowball.
Yes.
It's so it bothers me when people let the fear of the unknown with a tax debt situation cause them to to freeze, to paralyze, right? Out of fear, out of not knowing where to go, out of not knowing who to reach out to. And that's why I want people to know that we're here. Reach out to us. 9 times out of 10, we tell people, you don't need us. Here's what you need to do. You need just a little bit of guidance and you can get through this. The worst thing you can do though is ignore it.
Yeah, well, we all tend to ignore things when we don't know the answers or where to find
Right?
the answers. So,
It's very intimidating. And the tax agencies create that reputation on purpose, just so you know. They really do. They like the fact that we're all so afraid of doing wrong with our taxes to a point where we're super conservative with every position we take on our tax returns for fear of the IRS or the state looking at us cross-eyed, right? Like, oh my gosh.
yeah, I always think that they've got better things to worry about than me. So,
Yeah, it's
really,
true.
yeah.
It's true.
I mean,
They want
I
the
I pay my
people
taxes. I
that are
I do
big.
everything correctly. They're really not worried about me.
Yeah.
They're not
Nope.
worried about me. Okay, so thank you, Morgan, for
Okay.
being here today. Um,
Thank you for having me.
you're welcome. So if anybody needs to reach me, you can reach out to me at paula@paulachristine.com.